Hi, 8th grade. Welcome to week 6 of virtual learning. This week you're going to be starting on your poetry project, and we're calling it the Photoetry project because you're going to combine photos that you take with your poetry. So on Google Classroom, there is the scoring guide for the project. As part of your project, you're going to be completing 3 original poems, a sensory image poem, a symbolism poem, and an inspiration poem. And then you're going to be putting those 3 poems together with photos in a Prezi. So for each of the next 3 weeks, you'll be writing 1 poem each week, working on 1 poem each week. And then the final week is when you will work on putting the project together with photos. So this week, poem number 1 is Sensory Images poem. And as part of that poem, I would like you to include with that metaphors and similes. So I want to review metaphors and similes, and we have a poem as an example of that. It's called Harlem by Langston Hughes. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? Harlem by Langston Hughes. So in that we see the use of sensory imagery, right? Stinking and crusting over, right? Like sugar, syrupy sweet alludes to taste. So we see that same sensory imagery that we talked about with elements of fiction, but here we're seeing them in poetry. So for this poem, it doesn't have to be about nature, we change that. You'll write a poem about a place using sensory images and similes. Choose a place that is vivid in your mind. It may be a place that you visited long ago, but you need to be able to remember some details about it to be able to write about it in a descriptive way. Avoid using cliches in your comparisons, such as the sky was as blue as the sea. So for this, I do want to review metaphors and similes. So metaphor is a direct comparison, right? The ocean is a blank. The moon is a blank. Whereas a simile uses like or as. Summer is like, night is like, the ocean is like. So if we go back to that poem by Langston Hughes, we see, does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? So a simile. Does it stink like rotten meat? Does it sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. So comparing that dream that doesn't come true to something else using like or as in a simile. So below on the announcement on Classroom, I would like you to write 1 metaphor and 1 simile using the starters from each of these. So write 1 metaphor using one of these 5. Go ahead and type this part out with your metaphor, and 1 simile from one of these, keeping in mind, I want you to avoid using those comparisons. Avoid using those cliches like the sky was as blue as the sea. So after you have worked on writing those 2 examples, then you can get started on poem number 1, which is your sensory image poem. And there is a separate assignment for that as well. So for this week, since you're working on the poetry, you do not need to worry about the journals. So you can be finished with those journal entries. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me. I look forward to reading your poetry soon.